The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room had ever seen. It stretched so far that the ceiling disappeared into darkness above. Lights floated in the air like small stars, and the walls were made of some kind of metal that changed color every few seconds. Representatives from over 300 species sat in their assigned seats, arranged in a huge circle that went up and up like the inside of a bowl. Stood at the very center of this bowl, on a small platform that made her feel very small. She was not a tall woman. Back on Earth, she barely reached the shoulders of most people. Here, surrounded by aliens that were sometimes 3 or 4 times her size, she felt like a child standing among giants. But she did not let her fear show on her face. She had practiced this moment for weeks. She had read every report, memorized every number, and prepared answers for every question she could imagine. The future of her people depended on what happened in the next hour. "The representative from Earth may speak," said the council speaker. The speaker was a species that looked like a mix between a praying mantis and a tree. Its voice came out in clicks and hums, but the translator in its ear turned it into flat, emotionless words. Took a deep breath. "Thank you, Speaker. Honored members of the Galactic Council, I come before you today to request aid for my people." She pressed a button on the small device in her hand. Above her, a hologram appeared. It showed a planet covered in green and blue with white clouds swirling across its surface. Earth, her home. As many of you know, humanity joined the galactic community only 42 years ago. In that time, we have worked hard to be good members of this council. We have shared our knowledge. We have offered our services. We have asked for very little in return. She pressed the button again. The image changed to show a different planet. This one was smaller, with oceans that looked almost purple. "This is New Sol, one of our colony worlds. 6 months ago, a disease appeared there. We do not know where it came from. Our doctors have never seen anything like it." The hologram changed again. Now it showed medical reports, charts with lines going up and up, images that wished she did not have to share. "The disease spreads through the air. It attacks the lungs first, then moves to other organs. Death comes within 2 weeks of infection. We have lost 11,000 people already. The number grows every day." A murmur went through the crowd. Some of the aliens leaned forward with interest. Others leaned back, as if they were afraid the disease might jump through the hologram and infect them. "Our scientists are working day and night to find a cure," continued. "But we are a young species. Our medical technology is not as advanced as many of yours. We need help. We need access to your medical databases. We need experts who can guide our researchers. We need medicine and equipment that we cannot make ourselves." She turned slowly, looking at the faces around her. So many different species, so many different shapes and colors and sizes. Some had eyes like insects. Some had no eyes at all. Some floated in tanks of liquid. Some were just clouds of gas held together by invisible forces. "I am not asking for charity," said. "Humanity will pay for any help we receive. We will work to repay any debt. We only ask that you give us the chance to save our people." She stopped talking and waited. The silence in the great hall was heavy, could hear her own heart beating in her chest. Then from somewhere high up in the seats came a sound. It took a moment to recognize it. Laughter. One of the aliens was laughing. "Is this a joke?" The voice belonged to a species that looked like a huge slug with dozens of small arms running down its sides. The delegate was named, and he was known for his cruel sense of humor. "The humans are asking us to save them from a simple disease." More laughter joined his. Not everyone was laughing, but enough that could feel it pressing against her from all sides. "Honored delegate," said, keeping her voice calm, "I assure you this is not a joke. Thousands of my people are dying." "Thousands?" made a wet, bubbling sound that might have been a snort. "Do you know how many of my kind died in the plague of 8 billion? 8 billion gone in less than a year. And we did not go crying to other species for help. We solved the problem ourselves." With respect, said, your species had thousands of years of medical knowledge to draw upon. Humanity has been traveling between stars for less than half a century. We do not have the same resources. Then perhaps you should not have left your little planet, said another voice. This one came from a tall being that looked almost like a human skeleton wrapped in blue skin. You reached for the stars before you were ready. Now you face the consequences. We reached for the stars because we wanted to learn, replied. We wanted to grow. We wanted to be part of something greater than ourselves. Is that not why this council exists? To help species work together. The delegate, whose name was, made a gesture that the translator in his ear could not interpret. But the tone of his voice when he spoke again was clear enough. This council exists to maintain order among the civilized species of the galaxy. Humanity is not civilized. You are children playing with toys you do not understand. You fight among yourselves. You destroy your own planet. You breed without control and spread across space like insects. Felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. Getting angry would not help her people. We have made mistakes, she admitted. But we are learning, we are growing. We have much to offer this council if you will give us the chance. What could you possibly offer us? This question came from yet another delegate, who floated in a tank of green liquid that had no solid body at all. They were just collections of light and energy held together by their own will. Your technology is primitive. Your culture is violent. Yours is so short that you barely have time to learn anything before you die. That last comment brought more laughter. Knew that humans lived shorter lives than most galactic species. The average human might live 80 or 90 years. They could live for thousands. To them, humans must seem like mayflies, there and gone in the blink of an eye. Our short lives make us work harder, said. We know we do not have forever, so we do not waste time. That is why we have accomplished so much in so little time. That is why we will continue to grow and improve. Or you will die out, said. Like so many other species before you. The galaxy is a dangerous place, little human. The weak do not survive. Looked at the delegate for a long moment. Then she looked around at all the other faces watching her. Some showed amusement. Some showed boredom. A few showed something that might have been pity, but none of them showed what she was hoping to see. None of them showed a willingness to help. I understand, she said quietly. You think we are weak. You think we are not worth saving. But I must ask one more time on behalf of all my people. Will the Galactic Council provide aid to humanity in our time of need? The speaker raised one of its long, branch-like arms. The Council will vote. All in favor of providing aid to the human species, indicate now. Watch the voting lights appear around the chamber, green for yes, red for no. For a moment she allowed herself to hope. Then the lights appeared, red, 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 row after row of red lights spreading across the chamber like a wave of blood. A few green lights flickered here and there, but they were lost in the sea of red. The vote is complete, the speaker announced. The motion is, the Galactic Council will not provide aid to humanity. More laughter echoed through the great hall, was practically shaking with amusement, his dozens of little arms waving in the air. Go home, little human, he called down to her. Go home and die quietly. Do not waste our time again. Stood very still. Behind her she could sense waiting at the edge of the platform was her assistant, a young man who had worked with her for 3 years. He had wanted to come with her to the platform to stand beside her, but she had told him to wait. She had wanted to face the council alone. Now she was glad she had made that choice. She did not want to see her face at this moment. Slowly reached up and removed the translator from her ear. She held it in her hand for a moment, looking at it. Such a small thing. Such an important thing. Without it, she could not understand a single word the aliens around her were saying. She placed the translator on the platform at her feet. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away. The laughter behind her slowly died as the delegates realized what was happening. The human was not arguing. She was not begging. She was not crying or shouting or making threats. She was simply leaving. Fell into step beside her as she passed him. His face was pale and she could see questions in his eyes, but he did not ask them. He simply walked with her, matching her pace. "Ambassador," the speaker's voice echoed through the hall. "Ambassador, the council has not dismissed you. You cannot simply leave." Did not stop. She did not turn around. She did not say a single word. "This is highly irregular," the speaker continued. "You are showing disrespect to this council. Ambassador, ambassador." The great doors of the chamber loomed ahead of them. 2 guards stood on either side, members of a species that looked like bears made of stone. They watched approach with confusion on their rocky faces. "Stop her," someone shouted from the seats above. "She cannot just walk out." But did not stop. She walked right between the guards, who seemed too surprised to move, stayed close beside her. The doors slid open and they stepped through into the corridor beyond. Behind them, the voices of the council rose in a confused babble. No one had ever done this before. No one had ever simply walked away. The doors slid shut, cutting off the noise, and walked in silence through the long corridor that led to the station's docking bay. Other beings passed them, going about their business, not knowing what had just happened, not knowing that something had changed. When they reached their ship, a small vessel with the flag of Earth painted on its side finally stopped. She turned to look at. "Send a message to Earth," she said. Her voice was calm and flat. "Tell them the council refused our request." "Yes, ambassador," hesitated. "What else should I tell them?" Looked back toward the way they had come. Somewhere behind those walls, the council was probably still talking about what had happened. Still laughing, maybe. Still congratulating themselves on putting the humans in their place. "Tell them," said slowly, "that humanity is done asking for help. From now on, we help ourselves, and we stop helping everyone else." His eyes widened slightly. "Ambassador, that would mean—" "I know what it means." Walked up the ramp into their ship. "Send the message, let them laugh while they still can." The ramp closed behind them, and a few minutes later the small Earth ship left the station. No one tried to stop it. No one even noticed it go. In the great hall of the Galactic Council, the delegates had already moved on to other business. The humans were forgotten, just another small species that had asked for something and been refused. It happened all the time. It meant nothing. They did not know that everything was about to change. They did not know that the silence had begun. The first week after the council meeting passed without anything unusual happening. The galaxy was a big place, and the affairs of one small species did not attract much attention. Most of the council delegates forgot about the human ambassador within a day or two. There were more important matters to discuss. But remembered. Worked as a communications officer on the Galactic Trade Station, a massive structure that floated at the crossroads of 12 major shipping lanes. Her job was to manage the message traffic that flowed through the station every day. Thousands of ships sent reports. Hundreds of species exchanged information. It was her job to make sure everything went where it needed to go. She was good at her job. She had been doing it for almost 50 years, which was not very long for a like herself. Her people lived for centuries, and they had excellent memories. Could remember every message that had passed through her console for the last decade. That was why she noticed when the messages from Earth stopped coming. At first, she thought it was a technical problem. Equipment failed sometimes. Signals got lost in space. She ran a diagnostic on her systems and found nothing wrong. She checked the relay stations that connected the trade station to Earth's communication network. They were all working perfectly. But no messages came. Reported the problem to her supervisor, a grumpy named who had held his position for over 200 years. Barely looked up from his console when she spoke. The humans probably broke their own equipment, he said. They do that sometimes. Their technology is barely held together with hope and desperation. Give it a few days. They will fix it. Went back to her work, but she could not stop thinking about it. She had been handling communications with Earth for 15 years. In all that time, she had never known the humans to go silent. They were always talking, always sending messages, always reaching out to connect with other species. It was one of the things she liked about them. 3 days passed, then 5, then a week, still no messages from Earth. Tried sending a query to the Human Communication Center on New Tokyo Station. No response. She tried the Human Embassy on the Galactic Council Station. Nothing. She even tried the emergency frequency that all species used for distress calls. Silence. This is not normal, she told again. Something is wrong. Something is always wrong with the humans, replied. It is not our problem. We have enough to do without worrying about a species that cannot even keep their own equipment running. Wanted to argue, but she knew it would do no good. Did not like humans. Most did not. They thought humans were too loud, too emotional, too messy. They did not understand why the Council had ever allowed such a species to join the galactic community. But had worked with humans for a long time, and she knew them better than did. She knew that they were not careless with their communications. If anything, they were more careful than most species. They knew how young they were, how much they still had to learn. They tried very hard to do things right. For them to go completely silent was not a mistake. It was a choice. Spent her free time that week trying to find out what had happened. She searched the news feeds for any mention of Earth or its colonies. She found very little. A small article mentioned that the human ambassador had left the council meeting early, but the article treated it as a minor event. Nothing to worry about. She reached out to friends on other stations asking if they had heard anything. Most of them had not. A few said they had noticed the same thing she had. No messages from Earth. No human ships passing through. No contact of any kind. Maybe they finally realized they do not belong here, one of her friends said. Maybe they went back to their own little corner of space. Maybe said, but she did not believe it. The second week began, and started to notice other things. There was a medical research station on the edge of space that she handled communications for. The station had been set up to study rare diseases, and it employed scientists from dozens of different species, including humans. Remembered the humans who worked there. A doctor named who had developed a new treatment for a disease that affected a researcher named Minu who had spent years mapping the genes of over 100 different species. They were good people, dedicated to their work, always willing to help. But now, when she looked at the station's personnel records, she saw that the humans were listed as departed. All of them. Every single human scientist had left the station within the last 2 weeks. Checked other stations, other research facilities, other hospitals and universities and scientific centers across the galaxy. The pattern was the same everywhere. The humans were leaving, quietly, without making a fuss, without explaining why. They were simply packing up their things and going home. She said, walking over to her supervisor's console, "I need to show you something." "Can it wait? I am very busy." "No, it cannot wait. Look at this." She transferred her data to his screen. Lists of names, dates of departure, facilities that had suddenly lost their human staff, frowned as he scrolled through the information. "So the humans are leaving," he said. "Good. Less noise, less mess, less trouble." "You do not understand. These are not random people. These are doctors, scientists, engineers, experts in fields that are critical to the functioning of many galactic systems. The galaxy survived for billions of years without humans. It will survive without them now." "Will it?" Pulled up another set of data. "Look at this. The Galactic Emergency Response Network. Do you know who maintains the communication relays that connect all the member systems?" Did not answer, but his frown deepened. Humans said. A team of human engineers has been maintaining those relays for the last 30 years. They volunteered for the job because no one else wanted it. The work is difficult and dangerous, and it pays almost nothing. But the humans did it because they believed it was important. So we will find someone else to do it. Who? They refused the job decades ago. They said it was beneath them. They cannot work in physical space. Every species in the council turned down the responsibility except the humans. Was quiet for a moment. Then he waved his hand dismissively. This is not my problem. If there is an issue with the emergency response network, the council will deal with it. Wanted to scream at him, but she controlled herself. Getting angry would not help. Instead, she went back to her console and started making a list. Every service that humans provided to the galactic community, every job they had taken on, every responsibility they had accepted. The list was much longer than she expected. Humans ran the rescue ships that responded to distress calls in the outer sectors. Humans maintained the navigation beacons that guided ships through dangerous regions of space. Humans staffed the orphanages where children of extinct species were raised and protected. Humans worked in the mines and factories that produced materials no other species wanted to handle. They did the jobs that no one else wanted, the dangerous jobs, the thankless jobs, the jobs that paid nothing and offered no glory. They did them because someone had to, and because they believed that being part of the galactic community meant contributing to it. And now they were leaving, all of them. Every human in every position across the entire galaxy was quietly packing up and going home. Saved her list and stared at it for a long time. Then she sent a copy to her supervisor and to everyone else she could think of who might care. She did not know if anyone would listen. She did not know if it would make a difference. But she had to try. The third week began, and the first problems started to appear. A cargo ship carrying medical supplies broke down in the outer sectors. It sent out a distress call, as ships in trouble always did. The emergency response network received the call and forwarded it to the nearest rescue station. The rescue station did not respond. It was not that they refused to help. It was that there was no one there. The station had been staffed by a crew of 12 humans. They had all left. The cargo ship drifted in space for 6 days before another vessel happened to pass close enough to detect it. By then, half the crew was dead. The medical supplies they had been carrying were ruined. A week later, a navigation beacon in the system went offline. The beacon had guided ships safely through a region of space filled with gravitational anomalies for over 20 years. Without it, ships had to take a much longer route around the region. Travel times increased. Shipping costs went up. Businesses that depended on fast delivery started to struggle. The government sent a team to repair the beacon. They could not figure out how it worked. The technology was not complicated, but it had been customized and improved over the years by the human engineers who maintained it. Without their knowledge, the beacon could not be fixed. More beacons went offline. More rescue stations went empty. More research projects lost their key personnel. More services that everyone had taken for granted simply stopped working. And still, there was no word from Earth. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Watched the broadcast from her console, along with billions of other beings across the galaxy. This is unacceptable, said. The delegate was no longer laughing. His dozens of little arms were waving angrily, and his voice was harsh. The humans cannot simply abandon their responsibilities. They made commitments to this council. What commitments? Asked the delegate. I do not recall the humans signing any formal agreements. They volunteered for these positions. They can volunteer if they choose. Then we must make them change their minds. Send a diplomatic mission to Earth. Demand that they return to their posts. The council speaker raised one of its long arms. A diplomatic mission has already been attempted. 3 ships were sent to Earth's home system. They were turned away at the border. Turned away by what force? By the human defense fleet. The ships were not attacked, but they were made very clear that they were not welcome. They were told that Earth is no longer accepting visitors. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Delegates shouted over each other, demanding action, demanding answers. Watched it all with a strange feeling in her chest. Sadness, maybe, or disappointment, or something else she could not name. These were the same beings who had laughed at the human ambassador just weeks ago. The same beings who had refused to help when humanity was dying. Now they were angry because the humans had stopped helping them. They still did not understand. The meeting went on for hours, but nothing was decided. Some delegates wanted to send a military fleet to Earth and force the humans to cooperate. Others pointed out that the humans had done nothing illegal. They had simply stopped volunteering. You could not punish someone for that. In the end, the Council agreed to send another diplomatic mission. This time, they would offer to reconsider their decision about the plague. They would promise aid in exchange for the humans returning to their duties. Did not think it would work. She had seen the look on Ambassador's face in that old recording from the Council meeting. The moment when she had put down her translator and walked away in silence. That was not the face of someone who wanted to negotiate. That was the face of someone who was done. The diplomatic mission left the next day. The galaxy held its breath and waited. 3 days later, the ships returned. They had not even been allowed to enter Earth's system. A single message had been broadcast to them on an open channel so that everyone could hear. We asked for help, you laughed. There is nothing more to discuss. And then silence. The silence that had begun in the council chamber was now spreading across the galaxy. More stations went dark. More services failed. More systems that everyone had depended on without even thinking about them simply stopped working. And somewhere on Earth, Ambassador sat in her office and watched the reports come in. Her aide stood beside her, as he always did. They are starting to understand, he said quietly. Nodded, yes, but understanding is not enough. They need to feel it. They need to know what it means to be alone. How long do we wait? Looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there her people were dying on New Sol. The plague was still spreading. They had not found a cure yet, but they were working on it. They were doing it alone, without any help from the species that had laughed at them. We wait, she said, until they remember what it feels like to need someone. And we wait until they remember that need should never be answered with laughter. Nodded, he did not ask any more questions. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, and the silence continued to grow. 4 months had passed since the human ambassador walked out of the council chamber. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one had expected. Sat in his private office and stared at the reports on his desk. They made no sense. Everything was falling apart, and he could not understand why. The economy was one of the strongest in the galaxy. His people controlled vast mining operations across dozens of star systems. They exported rare minerals that were essential for building starships and advanced technology. They had been rich and powerful for thousands of years. But now, their mining operations were failing. The problem had started small. A few machines broke down on one of their outer colonies. The machines were complex devices that could dig deep into planets and extract minerals that no other technology could reach. They had not built these machines themselves. They had purchased them from a company on Earth. When the machines broke down, they contacted the company to request repairs. There was no response. They tried again. Still nothing. They sent a ship to Earth to demand service. The ship was turned away at the border. Without repairs, the machines stopped working. Production dropped. Other machines began to fail as well. They tried to fix them on their own, but the technology was too complex. They did not have the knowledge or the tools. had always believed that humans were simple creatures, primitive, barely more than animals. He had laughed at them in the council chamber. He had told their ambassador to go home and die quietly. Now he was beginning to think he had made a mistake. He pulled up a file on his computer. It was a list of all the technology and services that his people had purchased from humans over the years. The list was much longer than he had expected. Mining equipment, water purification systems, medical scanners, navigation software, communication devices, emergency shelters, rescue vehicles. The humans had sold them all of these things and they had bought them because they were cheap and they worked well. Too well now realized. His people had become dependent on human technology without even knowing it. And now that the humans had stopped providing support, everything was breaking down. It was not just the. Reports were coming in from all across the galaxy. Every species was experiencing similar problems. They had relied on human engineers to maintain their ancient transportation network. The network had been built thousands of years ago, and no one alive remembered how it worked. The humans had studied it, figured out its secrets, and kept it running. Now the humans were gone, and the network was failing. Cities that had been connected were suddenly isolated. They had depended on human researchers to develop new treatments for the diseases that affected their species. They were beings of pure energy, and their medical needs were very different from other species. Most doctors could not help them, but the humans had learned. They had developed treatments that no one else could have imagined. Now the research had stopped, and they were dying. The dozens of other species that made up the Galactic Council, all of them were suffering. All of them were discovering how much they had depended on the humans without even realizing it. Threw the report across his desk in frustration. How had this happened? How had his people become so weak? His assistant, a young named, entered the office. Was nervous. Everyone was nervous these days. "Sir, there is news from the medical sector." "What news?" "The plague on the human colony world. New soul. It has been contained." Looked up sharply. Contained how? "The humans developed a cure. They did it on their own, without any help from the council." For a long moment, said nothing. Then he began to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just realized how badly they had miscalculated. "Of course they did," he said. "Of course they did." He had told the human ambassador that weak species did not survive. He had told her that the galaxy was a dangerous place. He had expected humanity to die out, like so many other young species before them. Instead, they had done the impossible. They had saved themselves, and in the process, they had shown the entire galaxy that they did not need anyone's help. But the galaxy needed them. Across the stars, other leaders were having similar realizations. On the high stood before the ancient transportation portal and watched it flicker and die. The portal had connected his city to the capital for 3,000 years. Now it was nothing but a dead piece of metal, covered in dust and silence. "Can it be repaired?" he asked the technicians who stood beside him. They shook their heads. The humans were the only ones who understood how it worked. Without them, we cannot even diagnose the problem. "Then find them, bring them back." "How high? They will not speak to us. They will not answer our calls. They have sealed their borders and turned away every ship we have sent." Remembered what he had said to the human ambassador. He had called humanity uncivilized. He had said they were children playing with toys they did not understand. He had told them they should never have left their planet. Now his own planet was falling apart, and there was nothing he could do about it. "There must be a way," he said. "There must be something they want, something we can offer them." But even as he said the words, he knew they were hollow. What could he offer to a species that had already been refused in their moment of greatest need? What could he give to people who had asked for help and been answered with laughter? Nothing. He had nothing to offer. In the floating cities of the situation was even worse. They were dying, not from disease but from despair. Their species had always been fragile. They were beings of energy held together by willpower and hope. When hope faded, they faded too. Their lights grew dim, their thoughts grew slow, and eventually they simply disappeared. The human researchers had understood this. They had developed treatments that did not just heal bodies, but minds as well. They had found ways to restore hope, to rekindle the light inside those who were fading. Now the researchers were gone, and they had no one to turn to. Elder floated in the great chamber where the council met. Around him, the lights of his people flickered weakly. So many were fading, so many were losing hope. "We must apologize," said. "We must tell the humans we were wrong." "Will they listen?" asked another elder. "I do not know, but we must try. We cannot let pride destroy us." The council agreed to send a message to Earth. Not a demand, not a request, just an apology. "We were wrong to refuse you aid. We were wrong to laugh at your suffering. We are sorry. We do not expect forgiveness. We only wanted you to know." The message was sent. They waited for a response. Days passed, then weeks. No answer came. But they kept sending messages. Every day they sent the same apology. They did not ask for help. They did not make demands. They simply said they were sorry over and over again, hoping that someone on Earth was listening. On the Galactic Council station, the mood had changed completely. The great chamber where leaders once laughed and joked was now quiet and tense. The seats that had been full were now half empty. Many delegates had returned to there to deal with their own crises. Those who remained were desperate. "We need a new approach," said the council speaker. "Everything we have tried has failed. The humans will not respond to diplomacy. They will not respond to threats. They will not respond to bribes. What else can we do?" "Perhaps we should leave them alone," suggested a delegate from one of the smaller species. "Perhaps if we give them time, they will eventually forgive us." "We do not have time," snapped. His once proud voice now sounded tired and afraid. "Every day more systems fail. Every day we lose more of what we built. If this continues, our civilization will collapse within a generation." "Then what do you suggest?" Was silent. He had no answer. None of them did. The meeting ended without a decision, as so many meetings had ended lately. The delegates shuffled out of the chamber, their heads bowed, their spirits broken. Only one remained behind. The council speaker stood alone at the center of the great chamber, looking at the empty seats around it. It remembered the day the human ambassador had stood in this very spot. It remembered the hope in her eyes when she first began to speak. It remembered the pain when that hope turned to resignation. And it remembered the silence that followed. The speaker had lived for over 2,000 years. It had seen many things, wars and plagues, rises and falls, species that had ruled the galaxy and species that had vanished without a trace. But it had never seen anything like this. The humans had not attacked anyone. They had not started a war. They had not even raised their voices in anger. They had simply stopped helping. They had walked away in silence. And that silence was destroying everything. The speaker thought about what the human ambassador had said. She had asked for help. She had asked politely, respectfully, with humility. She had not demanded anything. She had simply asked. And the council had laughed at her. Now the speaker understood what the humans must have felt in that moment. The shame, the humiliation, the knowledge that no one cared whether they lived or died. It was a terrible feeling, the worst the speaker had ever known. And the humans had felt it too. They had felt it and they had remembered. The great chamber was quiet. The floating lights drifted slowly through the darkness above. The walls changed colors, but there was no one to see them. The speaker stood alone and wondered if the silence would ever end. Far away on Earth, Ambassador received the daily reports from across the galaxy. She read them carefully, as she always did. Then she set them aside and looked out her window at the sky. The stars were still there. They had always been there. They would always be there, no matter what happened on the small planets that orbited them. "They are suffering," said quietly from beside her. "Yes. Many innocent people are dying, people who had nothing to do with the Council's decision." "I know." Hesitated. "Is this right? Is this what we want?" Was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Do you remember what happened on New Sol, the plague that killed so many of our people?" "Of course. 11,000 died before we found a cure, 11,000 of our own people. And do you know what the Council said? They said it was not their problem. They said we were not worth saving. They laughed at us. They laughed while our children were dying." "I remember. I do not want innocent people to suffer, but I cannot forget what they did to us. I cannot pretend that it did not happen. We asked for help and they refused. We asked for compassion and they showed us contempt. How can we go back to helping them after that?" Had no answer. "We will not be cruel," said. "We will not seek revenge, but we will not forget. And we will not pretend that everything is normal. They must understand what they did. They must feel what we felt. Only then can anything change." She turned back to the window. The stars burned cold and distant, as they always did. And the silence continued. 8 months after the silence began, the first ship arrived at Earth's border. It was not a warship. It was not a diplomatic vessel. It was a small transport ship, old and worn, carrying nothing but a single passenger. Stood at the window of the tiny ship and looked at the planet that hung in space before her. Earth. She had seen pictures of it many times, but she had never visited. Few beings from other species had. The human defense fleet was already moving toward her. Half a dozen ships, much larger and more powerful than her little transport. They surrounded her in minutes, their weapons trained on her hull. A voice came through her communication system. "Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. State your identity and purpose." Took a deep breath. "My name is, I work as a communications officer on the Galactic Trade Station. I have come to speak with Ambassador." There was a long pause. Then the voice said, "The ambassador is not receiving visitors." "I know, but I am not here as a representative of the council. I am here as an individual. I have something to say and I need her to hear it." Another pause. Waited, her heart beating fast. She had risked everything to come here. She had left her job, her home, her people. She did not know if she would ever be allowed to return. But she had to try. "Hold your position," the voice said finally. "We will contact the ambassador." Hours passed, sat in her tiny ship and waited. She watched the earth turn slowly beneath her, blue and green and white. It was a beautiful world. She understood why the humans loved it so much. Finally, her communication system crackled to life again. The ambassador has agreed to speak with you. You will be escorted to the surface. Do not deviate from your assigned path. Any hostile action will be met with immediate response." "I understand, thank you." A small shuttle detached from one of the human warships and flew toward her. It docked with her transport and a human soldier stepped aboard. He was young, with short black hair and serious eyes. His name tag read Sergeant Wu. "Follow me," he said, "and do not touch anything." Followed him onto the shuttle. They flew down through Earth's atmosphere, through clouds and rain, until they landed in a city that seemed to stretch forever in all directions. Buildings rose into the sky like mountains made of glass and steel. Vehicles flew through the air in orderly streams. People walked on the streets below, going about their lives. It was overwhelming. Had never seen so many humans in one place. Sergeant Wu led her through the city to a tall building in the center. They took an elevator up many floors and finally stopped at a door that looked like any other door. "The ambassador is inside," Wu said. She has agreed to give you 15 minutes. Nodded, thank you, Sergeant. She opened the door and stepped inside. The office was simple. A desk, a few chairs, windows that looked out over the city, and behind the desk sat a woman that recognized from the old council recordings. Ambassador. She was smaller than had expected, older too. There were lines on her face that had not been there 8 months ago. Her hair was turning gray at the edges. Her eyes were tired. But there was steel in those eyes, strength that had nothing to do with size or age. Sit down, said. Her voice was flat, not angry, not welcoming, just empty. Sad. You said you have something to tell me. Speak. Had practiced this moment many times. She had rehearsed what she would say, how she would say it. But now, sitting in front of this woman who had been laughed at by the entire galaxy, all her prepared words seemed wrong. I am sorry, she said simply. That is what I came to say. I am sorry for what the council did to you. His expression did not change. The council did not do anything to me personally. They refused to help my people. That is different. No, it is not. I watched the recording of that meeting. I saw the way they treated you, the way they laughed, the things they said. It was cruel, it was wrong, and I am sorry. You were not there. You did not vote against us. I was not there, but I was silent. I knew about the vote. I heard about what happened, and I said nothing. I did nothing. That makes me just as responsible as those who laughed. Leaned back in her chair. For a long moment, she studied with those tired, steel-hard eyes. Why are you really here? She asked. I told you to apologize. Many species have apologized. We have received hundreds of messages, thousands, all of them saying sorry, all of them asking us to come back. None of them mean it. How do you know? Because they only apologized after they realized they needed us. If our leaving had not caused them problems, they would never have said a word. Their apologies are not about us. They are about themselves. Felt her heart sink. She wanted to argue, but she could not, was right. My apology is different, she said quietly. Is it how? I am not asking you to come back. I am not asking for anything. I know you owe us nothing. I know we do not deserve your help. I only came because I wanted you to know that at least one person in the galaxy understands what was done to you, and at least one person is truly sorry. Was quiet. Outside the window, the city hummed with activity. Millions of humans living their lives, unaware of the conversation happening in this small office. You left your home to come here, said finally. You risked your career, your safety, everything. Why? Thought about the question. Because silence is a choice. When the council laughed at you, I was silent. I chose to say nothing. I chose to do nothing. And that choice made me part of what happened. I cannot change the past, but I can change what I do now. I can choose to speak. I can choose to act. Even if it costs me everything, at least I will know that I tried. Something changed in his eyes. The steel was still there, but it was softer now, warmer. You remind me of someone, she said. Who? Myself, a long time ago, before the council meeting, before everything changed. Stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the city below. I used to believe that if we just tried hard enough, if we just showed them what we could do, they would accept us. I thought that being good was enough, that helping others would make them value us. You were not wrong to believe that. Was I not? The galaxy showed me exactly how much they valued us. They showed me with laughter and contempt. Rose from her chair and walked to stand beside the ambassador. Some of them did, but not all. There are people out there who appreciate what humanity has done, people who are ashamed of what the council decided, people who want things to be different. Are there enough of them? I do not know, but does that matter? You did not help the galaxy because you expected something in return. You helped because it was the right thing to do, because you believed in building something better. Was that belief wrong? Did not answer for a long time. She just stood there, looking out at her city, her world, her people. The plague on New Sol, she said finally. It killed 14,000 before we found the cure, not 11,000 as we originally reported. 14,000. Mothers and fathers, children, friends. They died because no one would help us. I know. And you want me to forgive that. You want me to go back to helping the same people who let my people die. No, I do not want you to forgive. I do not think you should forgive. What they did was unforgivable, but I also do not want you to become what they are. Cold, heartless, caring only about yourselves. Turn to look at, what do you want? I want you to remember why you reached for the stars in the first place, not because you expected gratitude, not because you wanted power, but because you believed that the universe could be better if we all worked together. That belief was not wrong. The council was wrong, but the belief was right. Pretty words, but words do not bring back the dead. No, they do not. Nothing can bring back the dead, but we can honor their memory by building something worthy of their sacrifice. We can create a galaxy where no species has to beg for help, where no one is laughed at in their moment of need. That was what you wanted, was it not, before everything changed? Closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet with tears. I am so tired, she whispered. I am so tired of being angry. Reached out and took the ambassador's hand. It was a bold move. Humans did not like to be touched by strangers, but did it anyway. Then rest, she said. You do not have to decide anything today. You do not have to forgive anyone or help anyone. Just rest. And when you are ready, if you are ever ready, we can talk again. Looked at their joined hands. A human and two species that had never had much to do with each other. Two people who should have been strangers. You are strange, said. So I have been told. My aide will arrange quarters for you. You may stay as long as you like. Thank you, Ambassador. Call me. Smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in months. Thank you. The ambassador nodded. Then she walked to her desk and pressed a button. We have a guest. Please see to her needs. The door opened and the young aide stepped inside. He looked at with curiosity, but he asked no questions. He simply bowed and gestured for her to follow. As left the office, she looked back one more time, was standing at the window again looking out at her city. But there was something different about her now, something that had not been there before. Hope. It was small, fragile, barely visible, but it was there. And sometimes hope was enough. 1 year after the silence began, the Galactic Council met again in the Great Chamber. The room looked different now. The floating lights were dimmer. The walls that used to change colors every few seconds now stayed gray. Many of the seats were empty, abandoned by delegates who had more important things to do at home than argue about problems they could not solve. But today, every seat was full. Every delegate had come, even those who had sworn never to return. They came because they had heard the news. The humans were coming back. Not to ask for anything, not to make demands. They were coming because they had something to say. The great doors opened. An ambassador walked into the chamber. She looked different than she had a year ago. Her hair was fully gray now and she walked more slowly, but her eyes were clear and her back was straight. She was not defeated. She was not broken. Beside her walked the who had traveled to Earth all those months ago, and behind them came a small group of humans in simple clothes, scientists, engineers, doctors, ordinary people who had spent the last year working to save their own species. Walked to the center of the chamber and stood on the platform where she had stood before. She looked around at the faces watching her. All the delegates who had laughed at her, all the delegates who had refused to help. They were not laughing now. Thank you for allowing me to speak, said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent chamber. I will not take much of your time. She pressed a button on the device in her hand. A hologram appeared above her, showing the planet New Sol. 1 year ago, I stood in this chamber and asked for your help. A plague was killing my people. We did not have the technology or the knowledge to stop it. We were desperate. The hologram changed, showing the medical centers where doctors had worked day and night, the laboratories where scientists had searched for a cure, the hospitals where the sick and dying had waited for help that never came. You refused us. You laughed at us. You told us to go home and die quietly. No one spoke. No one moved. The shame in the chamber was thick enough to taste. So we went home, and we did not die. We fought. We struggled. We lost 14,000 of our people before we found a cure. 14,000 mothers and fathers and children who should not have died, but we saved the rest. We saved ourselves, without your help. Lowered the device. The hologram disappeared. After that, we had a choice to make. We could continue serving a galaxy that had shown us nothing but contempt, or we could walk away and let you face the consequences of your cruelty. We chose to walk away. She paused, looking around at the delegates. I do not regret that choice. You needed to understand what you had done. You needed to feel what we felt. You needed to know what it is like to be alone in a universe that does not care whether you live or die. Shifted in his seat. His dozens of little arms were still, and his normally proud voice was silent. But, continued, a wise friend reminded me of something important. She looked at who stood quietly at the edge of the platform. She reminded me that the reason we reach for the stars was not to gain power or prove our worth. We reached for the stars because we believed we could make the universe better. We believed that working together, helping each other, building something greater than ourselves was worth doing. Not because we expected gratitude, not because we wanted anything in return, but because it was right. Turned back to face the council. That belief has not changed. We still believe in a galaxy where species help each other, where no one is left to suffer alone, where the strong protect the weak instead of mocking them. She took a deep breath. So we are here today to make you an offer, not a demand, not a request, an offer. The chamber was completely silent. Every eye was on the small human woman at the center of the room. We will return to the work we used to do. We will repair your beacons and maintain your networks. We will run your rescue stations and staff your hospitals. We will continue to serve the galaxy as we always have. A murmur ran through the crowd. Hope began to appear on faces that had forgotten how to hope. But said, and the murmur died, things will be different. We will not go back to the way things were. We will not pretend that nothing happened, and we will not forget what you did. She raised her hand, and the hologram reappeared. This time it showed a document, pages and pages of text. This is a new charter for the Galactic Council. It was written by humans, but it is meant for everyone. It establishes rules for how species should treat each other, rules about mutual aid, rules about respect, rules about what happens when one species asks another for help. Looked at. Under this charter, what happened to humanity 1 year ago would be impossible. Any species facing a crisis would have the right to request assistance. Any species that refused such a request without good reason would face consequences. Not war, not punishment, but exclusion from the benefits of the galactic community. She looked at. Under this charter, no species would be mocked for being young or small or different. Every species would be valued for what they contribute, not judged for what they lack. She looked at. Under this charter, we would truly be a community, not a collection of strangers who happen to share the same galaxy, but a family that takes care of its members. Lowered the hologram. We are offering you this charter. You can accept it or reject it. That is your choice. But know this, if you reject it, we will leave again. And this time we will not come back. The chamber exploded in noise. Delegates shouted at each other, arguing about what to do. Some demanded that the charter be thrown out. Others said it should be accepted immediately. Still others called for more time to study the document. The council speaker raised its long arm for silence. Slowly, the noise faded. "Ambassador," the speaker said, "this is a significant proposal. The council will need time to discuss it." "Take all the time you need," replied. "We have waited a year. We can wait a little longer." The speaker nodded. "Then this session is suspended. We will reconvene in 3 days to vote on the human charter." The delegates began to rise from their seats. Many of them were already talking in small groups, debating the merits of the proposal. Some looked angry, some looked hopeful, most just looked confused. Did not wait to see what they would decide. She turned and walked toward the great doors, her small group following behind her. Fell into step beside her. "You did well," said quietly. "We will see. They might still reject it." "They might, but I do not think they will. They have learned too much this year. They have suffered too much." Smiled slightly. "Perhaps, or perhaps they will forget everything the moment the crisis is over. That is what people usually do. Then we will remind them, as many times as it takes." They walked in silence for a while, through the long corridor that led to the docking bay. When they reached their ship, stopped and looked back. "Do you know why I asked you to come with me today?" she asked. Shook her head. "Because you came to Earth when no one else would. You risked everything to say you were sorry. You did not ask for anything in return. You just wanted us to know that someone cared." Turned to face directly. "That is what the galaxy needs more of. Not grand gestures or fancy speeches. Just people who are willing to stand up and say that cruelty is wrong. People who are willing to act even when it costs them something. People like you." Felt tears forming in her eyes. "I only did what I thought was right." "I know, and that is exactly the point." Reached out and took his hand just as had taken hers all those months ago. "The universe is full of beings who do what is easy, what is safe, what benefits them the most. But every once in a while someone chooses to do what is right even when it is hard. And that is how things change. One person at a time, one choice at a time." She squeezed his hand, then let go. "Whatever happens with the vote, I want you to know that you made a difference. You reminded me why I became an ambassador in the first place. You reminded me that there are still good beings in this galaxy, and that is worth more than you know." 3 days later, the council voted. The debate had been long and difficult. Many delegates had argued against the charter. They said it gave too much power to weak species. They said it would force them to help beings who did not deserve help. They said it was unfair and unreasonable and impossible to enforce. But in the end, the vote was not even close. 93% of the council voted to accept the human charter. When the result was announced, the great chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly something began to happen. One delegate rose from their seat and began to clap, then another, then another. Within minutes, the entire chamber was filled with applause. Species that had been enemies for centuries stood side by side, applauding. Species that had never spoken to each other reached out to shake hands or tentacles or whatever they used for greetings. At the center of the chamber, Ambassador stood alone on the small platform. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She just looked around at all the faces watching her and nodded slowly. It was not forgiveness. It was not forgetting. It was something else, something harder and more important. It was a new beginning. Later that night, sat in her office on Earth looking out at the stars. Stood beside her as he always did. "They accepted the charter," he said. "We won." "We did not win," replied. "There are no winners here, only survivors." "What happens now?" Thought about the question. What happened now? The charter was just words on paper. Making it real would take years of hard work. There would be failures and setbacks. There would be species that refused to change. There would be times when it seemed like nothing had improved at all. But there would also be progress, small steps forward, moments when strangers helped each other without being asked, Moments when the galaxy became a little bit better than it was before. Now, said, we get back to work, we fix what is broken, we build what is needed, we help those who cannot help themselves. Even those who laughed at us. Even them, because that is who we are, that is what makes us human. Nodded, he did not fully understand, but he trusted her. He had always trusted her. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant, but they did not seem quite as far away as they used to. The silence had ended, and in its place, something new was beginning, something built on pain and loss and hard-won wisdom. Something worth fighting for. Looked at the stars one last time. Then she turned away from the window and got back to work. There was a galaxy to heal,